Okay, can we start now? All good? Nitin? Yeah. So, thank you all for coming. Nitin, tu es tellement, hein? Sûr.
Ouais. Et dans quoi du monde?
Non, ça c'est. So, unfortunately, Nirvan couldn't make it. He had a wedding to attend, and I prepared a few slides for the HTTP 2.0. First of all, how many of you know what HTTP is about? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you have no clue about what HTTP is? Okay. So when you go on Facebook or YouTube or whatever Gmail, there's an underlying protocol that is used. It's called HTTP. So you have a different protocol. For example, when you're chatting on IRC, you use the IRC protocol. When you're making a DNS request, you're using the DNS protocol. So when you're visiting a website, the protocol that is used for displaying website, for transporting websites, is called HTTP. We have a HTTP protocol which was defined around 1993, and it went through one revision. So now it's known as HTTP 1.1. And with the rise of mobile and the need for more responsive application, Google came up with a protocol that they call SPDY. It's one of the protocol that Google came up with. It's called SPDY. Nitin, tu kan mute toi, s'il te plaît?
Pardon?
Tu kan mute ton micro. Juste quand tu as un problème, là, tu unmute toi. Okay? Okay, good. So we realized that there were a number of hacks that front-end web developers use. For example, one of the tricks they use to try to make it faster is that they do resource inlining, minifying of JavaScripts and everything so that it is delivered faster on the client side. So Google came up with this module known as SPDY. And what they did was trying to push that as the standard for at the IETF level. The IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, is the organization that defines how protocols are built. So they had this working prototype known as SPDY, and then they submitted it to the IETF, and then they said, this is how the next generation of HTTP should be. And it didn't sit well with a number of people. There's a guy known as PHK, Paul Henningkamp. He said that it's basically Google's protocol that everybody wants to push as the new standard. So they said that there's very little feedback outside of Google for that. So it caused a great debate. So the shortcomings of HTTP 1.1, some people think that it's not fast enough. And with Snowden revelations, how many of you know who is Edward Snowden? Okay. How many of you don't know who is Edward Snowden? Okay. Okay. Edward Snowden is a whistleblower. He showed to the world, basically, he was working on the intelligence community. He showed that large number of, there's a big organization known as the NSA, which is spying on a lot of people and collecting data of them. And he showed that we need more encryption to protect our privacy on the internet. So the problem with HTTP is that the SSL port came later. And when the SSL port came later, encryption is really something that's mandated in the core HTTP protocol. If you look at the specification at the IETF, you will see that there's no mention really of encryption. So in order to correct those two perceived problems, people felt the need for HTTP 2.0. So when we start talking about deploying application for HTTP 2.0, we have to see on the client side what is supported. So you have to look at the list of browsers. So if you go on the internet, you will see that Chrome supports it in the latest version, Firefox, even Microsoft Edge supports it, Opera. But web browsers like Lynx don't support it. So, so if you're going to test your web, at least not currently, Lynx doesn't support that. The total number of deployed HTTP 2.0 capable clients on the total market share is around 1%. So the uptake for HTTP 2.0 on the client side is still low. But that doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of it. I'll do a simple demonstration near the end with Node.js about how you can take advantage of HTTP 2.0. So I'll just go into the details, well, broad outline of HTTP 2.0 as a protocol. So on the server side, there are two major open source web servers that support it, Apache, which run like 50% of the internet website, and the other big one, Nginx, I think it's close to 30% now, 30%. It's a really fast web browser. So since it's a new protocol, you have to be aware of the security implication. You just don't enable SPDY on your web browser and say that's it. There were a number of security issues discovered in SPDY. One of them is a buffer overflow in Nginx. So since it's a new protocol and there's so many lines of code that were added in Nginx and Apache, you have to be prepared to patch. You just don't deploy it and then shoot and forget, because there's a huge number of code that were inserted in those servers, and there's not much auditing that has been done on that code. So it's really easy on the server side. If you got a recent Apache or a recent Nginx, you just need to, for Apache, it's SPDY. For Nginx, it's something that you just enable in the directive. So I won't go too much into that detail. I'm mostly interested in how front-end web developers can use it. So the nice thing about SPDY is that you don't need to change your content. This is great for webmasters. They don't need to be aware that SPDY is running underneath. So you don't need to change any of how you currently work when you post articles on websites. For example, if you're a forum administrator. So on your side, there's nothing. Your workflow remains the same. On the technical side, on the layer 6, something like that, instead of using ASCII, with SPDY, you change to the binary format. So you have your IP stack, IP and your TCP, and then you have your session, whether you have TLS or not. And then you have HTTP, but SPDY, which relies on binary framing. The advantage of binary framing is that it takes less space compared to ASCII with HTTP. The other thing is that it's kind of like you need new tools at the sysadmin level and at the backend developer to debug those applications. So it uses those, but it introduces this idea of frame, which is very flexible. So you can rearrange frames, you can reorder them, you can multiplex them. The protocol was designed with this kind of flexibility in mind. So just do a post, and then it's split into a header frame and a data frame. So and it can be reordered at many levels. The other nice thing about it, it supports multiplexing. The trick that most web developers tend to use is that they try to minify their JavaScript and CSS, or what they try to do is using a big file, a big image file, and then showing parts of it, and then aggregating all the different images. That's a trick, that's a hack around it, so that it uses only one single TCP connection. With a nice advantage of HTTP is that on the backend side, a web developer can take advantage of it so that you don't need to do that anymore. So it simplifies the workflow of backend software developers. But it also increases the headache for sysadmins like Cyril. So if you have only one TCP connection, how do you do filtering? How do you prevent excessive content? So, and for example, how do you limit DDoS? Previously, when we were limiting DDoS, what we would do is for this particular IP, he can do only 15 connection through HTTP. Now with HTTP 2.0, the challenge is you have a single connection, everything is multiplexed through it. So how do you filter that? And when you add encryption into that, how do you filter with encryption enabled? So these are some of the challenges that you have. For the backend software developers, you have new APIs now that you need to learn with SPDY. I'll show a brief example with something called resource push on HTTP. So you have those new APIs that will be exposed soon in PHP, but you can take advantage of. And as the uptake for HTTP on the client side increases, we will go through a phase where people will develop websites for HTTP 1.1, and then they will also at the same time maintain compatibility with HTTP 2.0 until at one point in time we're going to cross that and the whole web is going to be HTTP 2. So the other nice thing about HTTP 2 is that it allows streaming, because for each frame, for each stream, you can have a dependency and a weight associated to it. So you can, for example, you can tag a certain frame for CSS so that it has a higher priority, so that it gets delivered faster to be on the client side. And for example, things that are waiting, you can give them a lower priority. So you can take advantage of a streaming as a backend software developer. And the other thing that you have in HTTP 2.0 is that you have header compression. So if you measure the header size of an HTTP request, and we have so many modules running on a production server, the header tends to become very big. So HTTP 2.0 compresses the header by default. It tries to, at least it tries to. It tries very hard to. So again, everything that has been done by Google is try to take lessons from the current hacks that are being done with HTTP and try to find a way to put that into a protocol to simplify as far as it can the life of web developers. So I'll do a simple demo. How many of you use Node.js? Okay. So first thing you need to do, even if you don't quite understand the code, and it's too small. It's too small. So, well, first thing that you do is that you have to declare a variable and then you do a test on the client side whether it supports SPDY or not. So if it doesn't support SPDY, you can still do the other tricks that you used to do, unifying and everything. But if it does, you can just send free JavaScript files all at the same time within a single TCP connection. No need for grunt, no need for minification, no need for compression, everything. SPDY takes care of it. So it really simplifies the workflow of front-end web developers. And then that's it. I mean, it's so. Here's the result. Now, if you look at it, it says, maybe I should wait. Okay, that's better. I think we have an issue with this one. It doesn't seem some parts that are clear and then some parts not so clear. Okay, so here's the code. Just check if it supports SPDY. And Node.js has a way to do that really simple way. It's basically like you need to insert 4 lines of code just to check that it supports SPDY. And then you just send the free JavaScript files, and then SPDY takes care of it, multiplexes it, so it takes a single TCP connection to do that. It's called server push technology. It's if you look at on the web, there are not that many tutorials on the web for HTTP 2.0, but this is like a really simple one, but you can start taking advantage of. Of course, right now the market for in terms of client side for HTTP 2.0 is still very small, but this gives you a preview of what you can expect with HTTP 2.0 as its market size increases, and how it's going to simplify your life. Okay, so I went really quick through the slides, and I didn't include too many technical details, but because I know that there are not that many technical people here. So do you have any questions? Please come forward.
Even it's not possible to, it's not an obligation to minify JavaScript files, CSS files. I'm not sure that people are going to stop doing these things, even it's possible. You know, because you know what I mean. Even it's something that is going to be possible in the next months or years. People are not going to stop minifying and break their workflow to not doing these things, because I think since a lot of years we are doing this automatically. So even it's going to be possible and it's not an obligation to minify and concatenate the files, maybe, I don't know, people are not going to use the things and change their workflow. I don't know. It's only a point of view. I don't know what to think about.
Are there other front-end web developers around? So maybe you can explain. Okay, you already have your workflow. Come forward.
In fact, to bounce back on what he said, I'm thinking even if we are multiplexing and sending everything together, the bandwidth is still the same, you know. So even if I'm sending one big chunk or one big chunk which has been minified, actually it's only the concatenation part which we are only getting by sending many files at the same time.
Also on the TCP side, when the web server does multiple TCP connection, it goes through a whole. First it sends the SYN packet, and it waits for the ACK packet, and then it sends the SYN ACK. So there's an kind of an overhead for each TCP connection. So that's why they use this hack. The advantage of SPDY is that it does a single TCP connection, so there's only at once, but you get the SYN ACK and SYN ACK phase. So personally, from the server side, I like it because you have only one connection per client, so it's easy to get the number of clients connected to a website. But also, like if there's an issue with this particular GS file which is not working properly, it's more challenging for a server administrator to know where exactly the issue, because everything is multiplexed and everything is in binary format. So we would, on the sysadmin side and on the backend side, it's going to be more difficult because we will need new tools to debug that. So sorry for the guys who are late. So I was talking about the HTTP 2.0. It uses something called binary framing. Because it was felt that with HTTP 1.1, the protocol was just not fast enough. So Google wanted to deliver more ads at any time in 1 second. So they came up with this SPDY thing. And on the client side, you have, unfortunately, the rate of adoption is still slow. It's only 1% of the smartphone and the PC market. But all the major web browsers have adopted it. Up to now, they haven't integrated it as far as I know. Honestly, I have no idea. No idea. But from what I saw with Apple, Apple is going through another route to speed up the internet experience. They're most interested in working on the TCP/IP side. They're working on enabling something called ECN on the next version of Mac. The idea is that to reduce the buffering on the network side, they will use ECN to signal to the routers that there's an issue, and then to reduce the queue size. So that's what Apple seems to be focusing on. So
1.x.
Apple is still on the idea of supporting HTTP 1. Yes. Yes, correct. Correct. So again, HTTP 2.0, some people don't like it because they feel that it's a Google-sponsored protocol, and some people think that it went too fast, the development went too fast, and there wasn't even enough feedback outside of Google. And so time will tell. I mean, if SPDY reaches something like 60% of the market, it's going to be hard for Apple not to support those people. So at what point the market plays out. So. Of course, all of us mentioned browsers. They have it. They have it already in the latest version. But the problem is that not enough people are updating to the latest versions. For example, there's another protocol that Google is developing. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's called QUIC, Q-U-I-C. The idea is that they think that TCP has too many overheads for doing web browsing. So the idea is they're saying that, okay, we'll replace TCP and we'll just do HTTP over UDP. And people started screaming, said, what about error connection? Because UDP is stateless. We have no idea. And then they said, we're going to implement error forwarding on that protocol in QUIC. And in fact, I didn't know, but my web browser supports QUIC. And so my web browser supports QUIC, and it does some connection to the Google servers using QUIC. You can disable that if you don't feel comfortable with it. But I noticed that it's really fast with QUIC, but occasionally there are glitches. Yeah. So as I was saying, you have two major open source browsers that support HTTP 2.0 for the SPDY extension, SPDY as they call it. But you have to be careful when you deploy SPDY because it's a huge number of lines of code were added to those servers. So there hasn't been much security auditing being done. So occasionally you see overflows like this, heap-based overflows in SPDY. So you have to be careful. So it relies on framing, which are flexible frames. So you can reorder them. And since they are in binary format, they take less space than an ASCII format, and they're fast. With HTTP 2.0, you can multiplex, meaning you can send multiple frames along a single TCP connection. So this is great, for example, if you want to reduce the overhead when you have multiple TCP connection, you have to do the CNAC and everything. Here you do the CNAC once, and you send everything through a TCP connection. So you have a new set of API for HTTP on the backend side that can take advantage. For example, you can assign priorities to different frames. And that's something that the front-end side doesn't need to care about. So that's something that backend developers can do was writing PHP, Node.js backend side. So we can just start tagging different frames. For the sysadmin, their job becomes more complicated because they have a single TCP connection, and they have to look into that TCP connection, look at the different frames, find out the reordering and everything when there are trouble with the client on the client. Yes. Yes.
I don't know if I missed it in your presentation, but I have the impression, or maybe I've heard something you've said, but is it bidirectional? Like the connection is, if you have one open connection, one open TCP connection, can the server initiate the communication with the client?
True. Yep. Definitely. Definitely. And the other advantage, for example, if you deployed a big server in production, and if you look at the size of the HTTP headers, it tends to be huge because if you have many modules. So by default, HTTP 2.0 tries very hard to do to compress that. And I've shown a simple example how you would do that using Node.js. So you would basically 4 lines of code in Node.js to check whether the client supports SPDY, and then you would just say send those 3 JavaScript files, and then underlying that, it goes through a single TCP connection. SPDY takes care of it. So you don't need to do your hacks like minifying the JavaScript, minifying the CS, sending a huge image and then showing different parts of it. So the life of front-end developers become easier, but as David said, it would not many front-end web developers want to change their habits. So at one point, someone is going to tell them, there's no use to doing that. When like 70% of the market now supports SPDY and says,
On the other hand, I can still compress my file, I can still concatenate them and still send them over image.
Yes, you can. Yes, still do that. Yes, you can. So this in Node.js is called our server push, and Node.js supports that. If you have any feedback, I encourage you to subscribe to the ITF mailing list on HTTP2. I encourage you to read about SPDY. For mobile technology, this is very good. One of the things that I'm not very happy with HTTP 2.0 is that I see the huge focus and I see the features for the speed, but I don't see the part about the security. When I talked to some of the Google guys about it, they said, yeah, eventually we're going to that. We're still working on how to speed it more. So of course, you can have HTTP2 with SSL, but it's still here. SSL, TLS is, well, TLS is not going to away anytime soon. So it's going to be around for a long time. Yes?
Yeah. What about the browsers on mobile device? Is it supporting the HTTP2 same as?
Yes, there's a huge focus on the mobile side to implement it. As soon as Chrome got it on the, I think Chrome got it on the mobile side before it got it on the PC side, because I think the focus now is on mobile. Clearly, the market share is there. So definitely, mobile are getting very fast. But again, I think there's this problem. For example, I have a mobile phone. It's a 100 USD mobile phone. It's made by an Indian manufacturer. It's called Carbon, and it's an Android One phone. This means that all the company does is manufacturing the hardware, but Google takes care of all the updates. And I have a latest Android Marshmallow, and when I tested it, I definitely got HTTP 2.0 support in the browser. But for example, a lot of guys on Samsung are still lagging behind. So eventually we're going to get there, but it's about the cycle at which people replace their mobile and upgrade their web browsers. Any other questions? Google is already serving content through SPDY, part of it. And Google is even serving content over the Quick protocol. In fact, Prague a few months ago, and there was a working group, and there was the Quick working group, and everybody like, aren't you going to the Quick working group and see what you're doing there? But when I went there, so the guys working there, the guys presenting their work, most of them were from Google. So you could see the strong push on the Google side. So for now, I'm the biggest vendor of HTTP2 and Quick. It's Google. I haven't seen Apple is more conservative in its strategy, and Microsoft is basically incorporating everything that Google is doing. But I haven't seen content from Microsoft being served. Facebook, interesting question. I think that they do support HTTP2. I think that they do, as far as I know. I need to check. In fact, let's check. SPDY. Yep. Yep, they do. So Facebook added SPDY support in 2013. Yeah. So wait, I'll see on the remote side. Anybody on the remote side has any questions? Wait, let's see. So I'm just looking at for people who okay, we have a late comment. Just sending the handout link. Okay, great. So do you have any question on the remote side? Looks like nobody has any questions there. Okay, wait. Ronnie wants to see the audience. There you go. So any any other questions? Would you like to have a second part on the API part of HTTP for backend developers? Be nice. Okay. Okay. So there's interest for. Is there any interest for the Quick protocol that Google has been developing? I'm asking that because I spent like 2 hours there. So, for quick in Chrome, I have to check, but as far as I know, quick Firefox. I'll just check. Let's look at the adoption side, client. Of course, Google Chrome. It has been introduced in Opera. Okay. Yeah, Google supports Quick on the server side. No, no, except for Google, there's not much interest outside Google for Quick, at least for now. So, I guess this second presentation on HTTP 2.0 would be more focused on SPDY and how developers can leverage SPDY in their application to simplify their code, and also to let's maybe do a benchmark with HTTP and see how in practice what are the performance gains of HTTP 2.0 and SPDY. Okay, I think probably Nirvan might be interested in doing that part. I'm not really a web guy. I just have one blog and I play around. Any other questions? None? I think thank you very much for coming, and again sorry for the lateness, and sorry again for Nirvan who couldn't be here. He had a wedding to attend. I tried to substitute for him. Thank you again for coming. The Linux user group of Mauritius organizes meeting every 2 weeks. So if you want to talk about something, you can just ping me on Facebook. We put all our presentation on YouTube now. We try very hard to do that. Generally, we I've done some statistics, and I've realized that in Mauritius, the geek community is approximately around 250 people. So to put that into perspective, we have around 7,000 workers in the IT sector. I'm not counting the BPO sector. We have 7,000 IT professionals in the IT sector. Out of that, we have around 200 people who are interested in tech stuff. And that's compared to 2014. When I checked the first video that we put on YouTube, we had around 200 views for the first video. So I'm trying to graph and to get an idea about the demographic of people interested in Linux and open source technology in Mauritius. And the growth is very slow. We've moved around from at the beginning of 2014, we were 200. Now we're around 250. So our growth in Mauritius is very small. This means that this community of people is still very small. And it's important for us to meet here and to try to talk, and even if you cannot come, to at least be present remotely. And for the age demographic, we realized that our two biggest contingent of the people who are at university between 20 and 25 years old, and the other big group of what I call young working professionals who have not yet moved into management. So it's something like 25 to 34 years old. So this is interesting because I think that not even the government has this kind of statistic, and thanks to YouTube and the and their analytics, I was able to gauge some of the statistics. And it's very, because it gives us insight into what kind of people we should target. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yes, that's why we try to vary because historically Linux user group have been historically focused on sysadmin stuff, so things like Ansible, and now we try to vary so that we touch more people and try to get them to come. Somehow it's quite difficult because giving like 4 hours of your time on Saturday, it's not. Most people have. So, but again, since we're putting it on YouTube, you can later watch it, or maybe for web developers, for example, they could potentially like. For example, in France, I know that they do that for once a week, generally on Thursday or Friday. Night, they have either a hackathon or they watch a tech video together. Yes. Yes. In fact, you might be interested. We are doing follow-up podcasts online. I think you saw some of them. So if you have something that you talk about, I would be really happy to start an online discussion. We generally use Google Hangout because it's so easy to set up. I mean, and I think I would like to use Apple FaceTime. I've got very good experience with Apple FaceTime. Unfortunately, Apple products are still expensive for most people in Mauritius. So again, thank you very much for coming. You can subscribe on our YouTube video. It's our YouTube channel. It's Lugam Radio. If you have any comment, you can subscribe to our mailing list. You go on lugam.org. There's a section mailing list. You just click there and subscribe. And we also have a Facebook group. It's called the Linux User Group of Mauritius. So if you have any questions or you just want to test a topic, please feel free. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Ronnie, I'm done. Huh? Wait. We have a question. When do you estimate HTTP will be widespread? Again, it all depends on the rate of adoption in terms of replacing. There are still people who have really old mobile phones. We are still on Android 2.3. No, seriously. I mean, in fact, we've done a video on stage fright, which is a frightening vulnerability in Android, where someone, by sending you a video file or you stream it online, he can take control of your mobile remotely. And in fact, there's an application. It's known as oui, monsieur. So it's called Stage Fright Detector. So for example, when I do the test on my mobile, since I have the latest version of Android, it's already fixed. But a lot of people are still vulnerable in Mauritius to that. I think even Ish blog about it. So again, you need to. When I was at Infotech, people were trying to sell me all kind of smartphones from China and everything, and I told them, okay, I'm interested in your mobile. Here's the issue that we have right now with Android. We have this vulnerability, stage fright, and you're trying to sell me an Android 4.4 phone or an Android 5.0 phone. Has this been fixed? Will I get the latest HTTP too? Every question you need to ask those people selling smartphones, so that they know that next time they're going to come and try to sell smartphone to people, they need to make sure, they need to talk to their suppliers to make sure that Android is updated to the latest version, so that it supports HTTP 2.0 quick, and make sure that those vulnerabilities are fixed. And the lady there was like, she was trying to argue that Android 4.4 is better than Android 6.0. I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. So I think that's it. I'm going to stop the broadcast. So Ron is asking about the HTTP 2.0 support on this. I'm not sure how much of Nokia engineers are there still left around, since Microsoft fired most of them when it acquired Nokia. So I'm not sure that the guy who worked on Nokia 3310 is still around. What he's doing. So I think that's it. I need to stop the broadcast now. Thank you again.